from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. It's Mind the Gap, a practical web series for young and future music educators. Tonight on the program, Director of Bands at Franklin High School in Tennessee, Jacob Campos. Founder and Director of the Leadership Conservatory for the Arts at Tarpon Springs High School in Florida, Kevin Ford. Director of Bands at Allen C. Pope High School in Georgia, Bo Sodders. Director of Bands at Blythewood High School in South Carolina, Quintus Wrighton. Tonight's conversation moderated by Susan Smith. Please welcome Susan Smith.
Good evening and welcome to the 15th episode of Mind the Gap, a webinar series focused on young and new teachers and those student teachers whose experiences have been and continue to be interrupted by the pandemic. My name is Susan Smith and I'm an educational consultant for Music for All and a lecturer in music education at Troy University in Troy, Alabama. I've taught at all levels and areas of music education, and I'm especially interested in supporting young teachers as my daughters are starting their second and fourth years as music educators. My colleague and friend David Starnes, Director of Orchestras at Kennesaw Mountain High School in Cobb County, Georgia, and I've been hosting these since last May and have learned so much from our panelists and look forward to tonight's discussion on recruiting and retention before, during, and after the pandemic. I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to take a few moments and introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves. So Quintus, why don't we start with you?
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for having me. My name is Quintus Wrighton, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Bands at Blythewood High School in Blythewood, South Carolina. I also serve as the lead high school band director for Richland School District 2. I'm a graduate of University of South Carolina, University of Southern Mississippi, and the University of Memphis. I had a bunch of wonderful teachers and mentors along the way, so nothing you hear tonight is going to be original. On paper, this is year 13 of teaching, but it's actually 16. I'm fortunate to have a lot of opportunities teaching at middle school, high school, and university levels. So it's an honor to share the screen with such well-respected music educators tonight. Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here. Jacob, tell us about yourself.
Hi, yes, I'm Jacob Campos. I'm the band director at Franklin High School in Franklin, Tennessee. That's just about 20 minutes south of Nashville, if you've never known where Franklin is. And so I went to DePaul University, and I've been at Franklin the last 7 years now. I worked with David Aylett before and Brianna Vogt now. And that's us.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here. Bo Sodders.
Good evening. My name is Bo Sodders. I'm the Director of Bands at Pope High School in Marietta, Georgia. This is my 13th year of teaching and my third at Pope High School. Most of my career has been in Title I schools, so that has been pretty formative in my teaching. I'm a graduate of Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and like most Atlanteans, I'm a transplant.
Well, welcome. And last but not least, Kevin Ford, you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, good to be with everybody tonight. Really a privilege to be with all of you, and especially these great music educators. I'm one of the directors at Tarpon Springs High School. I've actually spent all 27 of my years teaching in public school at Tarpon Springs High School, and I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for being here. As I look at our list of attendees, I said that this was for new teachers and student teachers, but I see a lot of veteran teachers. And that reminds me that this is something that's on the mind of everyone. We weren't expecting a pandemic, and we've had to pivot at every instance and everything that we've done. And the same is true for recruiting and retention. So I think it's something that we're all thinking about and how to do that. I thought that we'd start the conversation tonight about what we did beforehand, before the pandemic, and the things that we felt that worked. Kevin, we'll start with you because I think that a lot of people think that Tarpon Springs was already there and it just happened, and it was a powerhouse that it is that we think of today before you got there. But it was really kind of the leftover job, right? It wasn't a big job before you. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it really was. It's not something I expected to be at, to be honest with you. It was kind of a last minute decision based on another position that I thought I was going to be starting. My very first rehearsal at Tarpon Springs High School, we had 7 students show up, and the band room opened up 1 period a day. So I just took the job. I had to teach 2 periods. I got another class. I got a jazz ensemble class, got them convinced to do that. So we had 2 periods at the high school. Then I'd actually teach elementary school. Anyone knows me knows that that's a scary thought. But it was a really humbling experience, and certainly one that I grew from. And I think for those of you that might be starting out, I know originally when I was looking at, going into teaching, I was looking at trying to get into a position or a place that had all the resources that you knew that you could be successful in, maybe had already had success. But as I reflect back on this career, I'm so blessed that I got put in this particular position, because it certainly stretched me as a music educator. It really required me right from the beginning to really focus on my why I wanted to teach, because that had to be shared with everyone, to try to build the program from the inside out, to try to get, do a paradigm shift and try to create a culture where people wanted to be there, and to show that the program is more than just music making, that we know that our participation in the performance arts can affect all aspects of our lives. And that's really where we needed to start, because there wasn't a big investment in music. None of our students were involved in private lessons or anything like that. So we really had to go back to the very beginning and why we felt music education is important and should be a part of every child's life, and articulate that to the best of our ability, and then to try to create a format and a program that people could participate in that would really stretch them both on the personal side as well as the musical side.
Seems like embracing the community and finding out what's important to each area is so important in terms of recruiting and retaining students. Bo, both you and Jacob have followed people that were there and had successful programs. How do you continue that, and what are the things that you all have been doing pre-pandemic to make sure that you're recruiting kids and retaining them in your programs? Or Jacob?
Sure. Yeah, I can start for sure. Well, Franklin has had a long history. Our band started in 1937, and it was just a simple brass band. And then it wasn't until the 80s when the band got really, really big. And then it kind of had a little slump in there. And then David Adelit came along, who's my mentor, one of my best friends in the world. And what he decided to do was, he took his great musicianship and leadership skills, and he reads a lot of books. He loves to read books about companies and pioneers in any kind of avenue or entrepreneurship. And he applied those to the band and said, well, let's make ourselves a big, hairy, audacious goal. When the band had no business even imagining, making finals at a BOA, he said, in 10 years, we're going to make finals at the Nationals. And we almost did. It's 21 is this fall, and we got 13th one time. And the best part about it is not the goals. It's not actually the placements. It begged all of us to ask the questions for our kids and us as well. Anytime you set a goal, that's great. But what are the questions you're asking yourself in terms of, if I want to be that quality, how do I operate that way? How am I going to perform to be that, to get there? And how will we act as people, our character? And so that's really important to me. And the thing that I feel like I'm trying to do is deepen that, but also, we're just like him, we're going to try to apply for Midwest and other things. But even through this, one thing that became really important to us is community. And so we took our performances and we started thinking about how we can be more service-based as well, like playing for veterans and things as well. We have all these skills. Why not be service-based as well? So I'm trying to build our foundation in our community, because they're the ones that will be able to give back to us even more and help lift us up to that national level.
Yeah, just in general, the pandemic has made us all have to be more creative and allow ourselves to think about things that we never would, because it's not the way we've always done it, or things like that. So I think there's been some pluses for sure. Bo?
Absolutely. So I took over for a legacy director that was, I think I was years old whenever Pope was born in 1987. And so Mr. Gribble was there for 31 years. And so I'm the second band director at this school. And so walking into that, you have to figure out, for me, it was about relationships and cultivating those relationships with the students, with the kids, the parents. creating a safe haven for them, and making sure that they know that we're bonding this rapport with everybody and we're going to work at this together. And that has paid off dividends for us, in order for us to continue the program at Pope. So that was very, very important to me in kind of taking over Gary.
Awesome. And Quintus, you've also got that middle school perspective because you were at the middle school and also the assistant at the high school before becoming the director. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a little bit. Yeah, that's correct. Kind of had a little bit of a roundabout approach to it, though, because I left Blythewood for a bit and did doctoral work, and then came back to South Carolina. But yes, I taught. My very first job was at Blythewood Middle School. I student taught there and then came back after my master's degree and taught there, and following people who were incredibly strong in their roles as directors and achieved a lot with the kids. But again, I fully agree that community is critical when it comes to building and maintaining a program. Blythewood is not a large community at all. It's very small. I think we actually have there are 3 actual stoplights in Blythewood. It's northeast of Columbia, and slowly but surely Columbia is kind of pushed out towards Blythewood. But it's a small community, and folks here are very, very committed to instrumental music education. So continuing to engage them as best we can is super important.
And you think your perspective on being at the middle school and the high school is probably something that's very helpful. You know, a lot of times I know middle school teachers and elementary teachers feel like the high school guy only comes down when it's time to recruit, right? Or just shows up. When I was my last job, I was the middle school and the high school band director. So I didn't have anybody to blame but myself if I didn't have what it was I needed. But what are some techniques and things that you use pre-pandemic in terms of bridging that gap between the elementary and those who start in the elementary and then the middle school and the high school?
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, having been the middle school guy, I saw it viewed it to be incredibly important to be a part of the middle school program. And so visibility and connection are 2 of the biggest things that as a high school director that I engage in. So I spend a lot of time at the middle schools and do my best to serve those directors and the students in any way possible. And whether that's, a one-on-one lesson with students, or I'm teaching sectionals or a master class, or I'm subbing for, the first portion of the day if they have to be out, I'm happy to do any of those things. And I think it's important to use your branding here. So I'm always wearing Blythewood High School band gear when I'm in a middle school band room. And that helps in many ways. You're developing relationships, and there's no substitute for that. Working with those students from 6th through 8th grade helps to relieve some of those apprehensions that they have about going up to the high school level. And it helps the students to see the high schools, that relationship between the middle and high school director helps the students to see it more as a singular 7-year commitment, as opposed to, going from middle school to high school, I just kind of drop it then. They need to see that as kind of a family, as a singular program, as best you can make it that way. We also have some of our high school students go and teach lessons at the middle schools whenever that's possible. Now, we can't really do much of that right now, but pre-pandemic, we did a good amount of that. When it comes to some of the events that we have, we also do our best to incorporate those 8th grade students. We would do, like when we do our spring concert assessment, when it's in regular times, the middle school program will be a part of that concert. So we take care of organize that entire thing for them. We do our standard 8th grade band night, having the middle school kids on campus as well. But one of the biggest things we do that I'm really proud of here is a week-long summer band camp for our rising 7th and 8th grade band students. And we host it on the high school campus. So the kids get to come and be a part of that. We'll bring in a clinician. We'll do some master classes with them in that way, just so that they get the feel of being on this campus. And we'll have some high school kids kind of serve as those counselors and mentors, so they get to build some of those relationships.
I just had a horrible flashback to one of my feeders once. I showed up, walked into the band room, and the middle school band director said, "See, I told you she didn't have horns." Probably not the thing that you want to be both saying that might be true. I'm not sure, but Kevin, you guys do an icebreaker, similar kind of thing, don't you, at Tarpon? I'm sorry, you're muted.
We do. We start with an icebreaker. That's how we begin our season, where we bring everybody together for the beginning of the year, beginning of the season. We do that at the end. It's usually the last Saturday before school gets out. That's usually when we'll announce our plans for the fall, things that we want to do, get accomplished. It's the first time all the students come together. Then we usually take 2 weeks off, and then we do a summer training throughout the summer just on Tuesday evenings, where anyone who's in town that's not on vacation or at a music camp comes in and rehearses with us, where we'll do maybe an hour and a half of music, maybe an hour and a half or an hour of visual in that. But we also do, similar to Quintus, we do a summer band camp for the middle school students. That's really helped a lot, where we start the fifth graders going into sixth grade. So we spend 2 weeks with them trying to help the middle school get started there, because we know that's such a challenge in the beginning of the year. So that's really helped a lot. Then they do like an intermediate level, and then we do like an 8th and 9th grade band, concert band with that as well. And then we have our traditional middle school night in the fall, where we just invite anyone who's playing a musical instrument, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. They're welcome to come over. They'll play the Star Spangled Banner with us. They'll play music in the stands with us, and then we get to perform our production at halftime for them. And then in the spring, we do a showcase concert where we bring, we probably invite about 6 middle schools, and we do an evening where everybody has an opportunity for their concert band to perform, and then our jazz ensemble usually opens it, and then our wind ensemble usually closes it. But it brings everybody together, and everybody has the opportunity to be able to do that. One of the things that we have noticed that's really helped a lot is we do shadow days. We start those in December, and they run from December all the way to the end of the year. So any middle school student who would like to shadow a leadership conservatory student for the day, they can come in. They'll come into all and view all the music classes. Then we take them into a couple of the academic classes, so they can ask questions. They get it's kind of the day in the life of a Tarpon student, and we've noticed that's really helped them. They get to meet all the directors. They get an opportunity to meet more of the students, and we've noticed that that's been a very positive impact on our ability to outreach to them.
That's a great idea. We do that for students moving in sometimes into our schools, but to think about it in that transition, that's a fantastic idea. Well, let's move a little bit about what your plans are in terms of recruiting during the pandemic, and how you've been able to stay in touch with your students. Let's maybe kind of go around the room and just find out the different teaching scenarios that each of you are in, and then how you're able to stay connected with those students moving forward. So Jacob, why don't you tell us how you're teaching?
Well, we had some extra challenges this year because both of our middle school band directors were new this year. So both of our other teachers left during the summer. It was poor timing, but hey, we're here. And so the good thing is it prompted us to do something. Now it's just kind of the norm is Brianne and I, we each visit 1 day a week over at the middle school, and we meet with those kids, and we just, we do pull out sectionals. And when we're there, obviously we're helping them get better, but it's always a good time. We try to be really personable and talk about their lives and, help them warm up to us. And then similar to what Quintus is doing is we have we call them band buddies, and they go over, and it's some of our rising seniors. So it's those kids who want to have a legacy for their band next year in the fall. They're going over and teaching lessons at the middle school. And sometimes the lessons are just simple, like, let's talk about what high school is like. Let's talk about how do I plan for class? And they get to ask them whatever they want. And that's really important. They get to ask those questions like, how can I do band and be in AP classes and International Baccalaureate student and all of that? And then they give them tips, and they show them a lot of the kids will show them like their colorful agendas and stuff, which the kids like. And besides that, we have an event right after spring break where because of COVID, we're trying to be really careful. So we're trying to warm those parents up to trusting us with the high school band. Our parents now know that we can operate this way. So our brass are coming over on our Tuesday, and our woodwinds are coming over Thursday. And we're going to do like all of our brass with the 8th graders, and they're going to play some of the Mandalorian and learn some of our fundamentals, and then play on the track for the parents. And it's just an afternoon to hang with our kids, and they'll get pizza. Same thing for the woodwinds. They'll play something really fun that used to be our side-by-side concert, which was our wind ensemble, where the 8th graders sat in, and we both played our concert performance rep for each other, and then we played it, and our kids helped play along with them on one of their tunes. And just really trying to stay connected. And we're doing a really big project right now with the whole band, and we're trying to get that communication to the middle schools. We're doing this alumni project, where I mentioned that our band has been around since 1937, but we really haven't stepped back ever and looked at that history. And now we're getting to show our kids videos of our band in parades during segregation and then after, and then talk about those things and those pioneer students who worked to bridge that for their other kids. And then we have, we're talking, there's a man named Bobby Langley who's he graduated in 58, and he's going to meet with the kids and talk to them about it. And so now these seniors who feel like their senior year was a little less in some ways, we're hoping that for them and for eighth graders, they'll say, well, I'm entering something that's a long legacy it's wide and varied over time.
Those are fantastic ideas. Bo, tell us about your setting, where you're teaching.
Sure. We started the year full virtual, and now we are in a hybrid schedule. And the kids come to school 4 days a week, and they have Wednesdays as a professional learning day for teachers as well. So some things that we've been doing, I mean, I piggyback on everything others have said. Some new stuff that I was thinking about. Part of it, I feel like our job is to also inform parents, and get them on our side. So I took an initiative early on to really detail out the registration process, because our students are now registered for next year's classes already as of the end of January. So in late December, early January, we put out a website that said, this is what the registration form looks like. When you get this is exactly what you will click. We showed them this is a sample schedule of your entire 4-year curriculum where band is included. And yes, you can do AP and STEM and an academy, and band can still be a part of this program for you. We detailed out exactly, this is how your registration process and the audition process for the bands work. So they've had all this to kind of marinate in throughout the month of January. And then once a week, the Fine Arts Department, we put together a very candid video of the students talking about how impactful the fine arts has been on them, for a sense of community or musical fulfillment. And every week we kind of blasted that video out to our community. And again, part of that was just to maybe unconsciously show how strong of an image that we have, and allowing those families to trust us and then enroll their student into band. So that's kind of what our game plan was, to kind of get students, because we cannot have time at the middle schools. So everything that we've been doing is over Zoom or propaganda skills, really. And so that was kind of our goal, is to showcase our program through different sorts of media. And another thing I really found that's helped our program this year, and I give credit to Miss Paula Williams because this was her grand idea, but we have a Pope band night every Wednesday night, and it was a place where we invited all the middle schoolers and all the high schoolers just to come. It's another Zoom, but it was a place where they could all come together as a program. And that has been really strong for us, to have a student leader talk about a practice tip, or have a tuba player do a student performance. We play Gimkit games together. We watch different videos of the Pope band, and it's just a good community that we've kind of started building on Wednesday nights together. So that has been really strong for our program.
One of the things I noticed you guys doing too was those signs in seniors or underclassmen's yard. You want to tell us about that real quick, and then we'll move on? Yeah,
a lot of people started doing this at the end of last year, but we go around, we put a Pope band senior sign in everyone's yard. And we did that last year in the very beginning of this year, just to kind of showcase these senior classes. And so that was really strong image for us. And people started spawning. The Pope High School kind of spawned off and did their sign after us. So I think that was super positive.
And I love the idea of showing them the registration. We give them degree maps all the time in colleges, like you have to do this and this to finish, but we don't always tell them exactly how they can still take our classes in music and take these other classes they want to. So that's brilliant. My husband says every problem is a communication problem. So you're smart to get that out there. Quintus, why don't you tell us about where you're teaching? And
well, we started off virtually, just like most other folks did. And after several weeks of writing and adapting some safety and procedures, protocols and procedures, we were actually able to get back into marching band, at least in person, and kind of held a modified band camp. As once football started, of course, some of the numbers restrictions eased a bit per instructor, so we were able to do a little bit more full band stuff, and we shifted to an actual hybrid setting on November 4th. So right around election time, we got back to hybrid, and it's been a lot of Google meeting, So the students have the option if they're either in person or they're e-learning, and we're kind of broken into cohorts rather. So we have sets of kids that are there for 2 days a week, and then Friday's an asynchronous day for everybody. In terms of engaging the kids and working through just kind of recruiting in this setting, I'm in a district where we cannot formally recruit. So again, it's a visibility thing as best we can. Now, with us having was engaging a lot of Google Meeting, I do Google Meet pop-ins whenever I can. My schedule does allow for that some with the middle school groups. And so they'll have their middle school folks will have their in-person group, and then they'll have their group that's online at the same time. So we have dual modality going on. So I'll pop in when I can, doing that sort of thing. We kind of had to adapt our Rising Ninth Grade Band Night. So when we have that event typically would be in person, but now it's shifted to completely online. And so I had to dust off my Google Slides skills and embed some videos and that sort of thing, so the kids have the opportunity to still see and ask questions about what the program, how the program operates, and parents as well. During that Rising Ninth Grade Band Night, though, I thought it's always critically important that during the Q&A period, that it's not just the kids talking to the adults and the parents asking questions of the adults, but them have an opportunity to communicate with the students that are actually in the program. So we'll have a student panel there that's present to answer some of those questions. I have certainly increased my social media activity. We have Instagram and Twitter and Facebook groups for our band program, like most other groups do. And typically in a regular year, I'd have a student that's running it, but understanding how important it is that we get that recruitment information, that retention information out, I've taken over those accounts, and I'm really, really intentional about being regularly active on those accounts. And then, of course, we have some recruitment videos that we've been working to put together. And this year, through our fine arts coordinator, we have enlisted the help of kind of our district producer, who puts together videos and kind of made some hype videos for us. And so that's been very helpful, because we're pushing those out more and more this year.
Yeah, band hype videos. I love it. Well, and then Kevin, you had a totally different scenario this fall. Can you tell us about some of the things that you all did?
We did. We were out from March until September, where we weren't able to meet in person with the students. When we started to see what was going to happen, I believe back in June, even before all the events were canceled, we decided that we were just going to go in a completely different direction, knowing that we were going to probably be facing, a difficult challenge. And one of the things we wanted to do, I think was probably important to all of us that are here tonight, is to not allow this pandemic to lessen the experience for our students that we have now, especially our seniors who have given us all so much over the years, and to try to create within the restrictions that we have still a very meaningful and special experience for them. So rather than recreating a version of our normal or typical fall curriculum, we decided to go in a different direction, do something that we've never done before. And we did a thing called the Hamilton Project, which ended up being about a 45-minute production in 2 acts. And starting in June, we started writing that and piecing that together. And then we would Zoom in once a week, and then we would learn whatever music we had for that day for about an hour and a half. And then for an hour, one of our choreographers would come in, because there was a lot more movement in this particular production. So you'd see all the kids in Zoom in their living rooms learning the movement. We had no basics, no band camp. So we did what we could over Zoom visually. And then what our section leaders would do would be once a week, they would meet one-on-one with the people in their sections and go over just some visual concepts the best they could in a very unintimidating environment, because we found that our incoming students were very nervous about all of it, not having the opportunity to work with us one-on-one. So we tried to make that as comfortable for them as we possibly could. When school started in September, we were able to meet outside. So we put everything together outside. We've just recently moved into a new building. We have a large landing out in front of the music building. So it was large enough for the students that were there, because at that time we had maybe 35%, 30% of the students in person. The rest were online. So I would just sit with a laptop with the students who were at home right in front of me, and then I would separate out the brass and woodwinds, and we would just go at it every day, doing the best we could to piece that together. Then they would come in on a Tuesday and a Saturday, and then every rehearsal we would learn more and more of this production. We weren't able to perform at football games. They would only allow, I think it was up to 10 people together. So the only time we got to perform at a game was the very last game. It was a playoff game starting in November, where we never even went into the stands. We just came out, and I think we performed maybe the first 7 minutes of the Hamilton Project for them. Then we went back inside. But at least for our seniors, they at least got that one last performance out. So what we ended up doing was in November and December, we, much like a Broadway musical, we sold our stadium. So we could do, I think it was 20%, 25% capacity to the stadium, which in our stadium, that was about 650 people. So we booked 10 shows for anyone in the community who wanted to participate in that. Fortunately for us, it sold out each time. We had no idea if people would show, to be honest with you. We just, it was something we had never done before. I didn't know if people would take an interest in that, but I did think that it would challenge all of us in a way that we would never have been challenged before. And I think for our kids, they were very receptive to it because it was something that was new and different for them. And it wasn't a repeat of something they had done before. So it got them excited. Even though they weren't able to do their traditional things in the fall, because it was something new, it created a new energy for them. And it was a challenge. So there was not, any downtime. It pushed them as hard as a normal fall curriculum would, just in many different ways. They were asked to sing and dance and do some different things that they hadn't done before. And then musically, we made sure we arranged it in a way that was challenging for them. But within those 10 shows, each night was a theme night. And then we had, I think, 4 of our middle schools. What we did was set up the night where it was just for their families. So a middle school could come in and they would do their holiday concert or an abbreviation of it. So they were out there for an hour and their bands would play. And then we were able to perform the Hamilton Project for them afterwards. So that kind of took the place of our middle school night. But it was really exciting to celebrate what those students had been doing, online or hybrid situation. It was really nice having them on campus and seeing the students come together. So that was our way to outreach to them. And then, like many others who've said on the call, at this point, because we're not able to actually get on campus, we've really started to produce some videos and put out there on their Snapchats and their Instagrams, try to create a presence for them. And then our Triumph Honor Society is doing something where they've reached out to the middle school directors, and they're going to start meeting with our middle school students and trying to help them, especially the beginners, get going so they can do some one-on-ones and try to help their development with that.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that pushed the staff too, creatively, and being able to get done what you did in the amount of time, for sure. Absolutely. Jacob, we have a question for somebody kind of on that about lessons. Can you elaborate on your high school students teaching lessons at the middle school, and how were you directly or indirectly involved in the teaching, or you?
Both. Actually, right now, Brianna and our middle school directors are the main ones over that. So that has been her project primarily. We both worked on it together to get it going. But those students, they signed up for wanting to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's kind of whoever just shows up. And our students, they do a sign up, and whoever signs up, our seniors work to match with them. And so then I know Brianna is working on curriculum for them. And so she talks, we always try to use the language of, of trying to get our kids to understand how to explain how to form an embouchure, how to use good air. We use that language, and we try to, in our normal day-to-day teaching, ask a lot of questions. And, throughout the year, we do projects where the kids have to present a podcast or do a video, like a YouTube video, where they present how to play your instrument well, so that they're having to think on the teaching side, because we believe, on the teaching side is when you even get more depth in your knowledge. So hopefully that's training them to do that well. And then we kind of just program it toward that, and she was there the very first few days, to kind of see where the kids were. And then as the kids kind of meet and they chat, they have like a group text in our Schoology, and they kind of talk about what each student needs a little bit before. And when they go down there, that's what they present them. And sometimes they're just working on their concert lit, and sometimes they're just working on fundamentals. And also sometimes, like I said, they're talking about those things that middle schoolers worry about when going to high school.
Yeah, I think that idea of teaching peers is really key. We give people leadership titles, but then we don't ever let them lead or teach. And a program like mine, where it was tiny, my section leaders had to teach from the beginning. I didn't have a staff. They were warming up, their peers, and I think it's important for us to kind of guide them towards that, because I think it's possible. I just think that sometimes directors were not willing to give that up. Well, the big thing that we're all thinking about, one of the other things is about retaining, and how do we keep the ones that we have when they've not had those same experiences that they normally have had. And a lot of you're all thinking out of the box in terms of recruiting. One great example I saw from when my daughter was student teaching in choir, they would have basically a choir draft where, everyone in the choir would suggest 5 or 6 people that they thought would be great. And the director would send letters to each of those 5 or 6 kids to kind of just get the information out. And getting a private letter from that director really makes an impact on kids and obviously choir is a little bit different than band, but we all have places for kids philosophically like that. But contests and travel are what the carrots sometimes that we would kind of cab for them, and we're all a little concerned about that. And I know those folks in the travel industry is something that they've really taken a hit over, and they're ready to get back and serve our schools. Where do you think this is going to go moving forward, and what are your thoughts in terms of retaining? Quintus, you want to start us?
Sure. Our goal at Blythewood has always been when we entered this circumstance is to give the kids as much of an experience as possible with as much of the original experience that we had pre-pandemic as possible without over rehearsing them. And so of course we engaged in that modified band camp and rehearsal schedule. We would typically rehearse, our band camp would typically be about 3 weeks long. But it was compressed down rather to 1 week. And we had to, with the numbers restrictions, we had to actually create half days where we'd see a portion of the kids for half the day, another portion for the other half of the day. And we were broken down at the very beginning or restricted to 9 students per instructor in an instructional space. So that required, of course, me being very involved with the protocol and procedure writing process for the district on the front end, so that we can kind of control that while creating an environment where we could do what we continue to do, or we've always done, but in a safe way. So we were modified in that way. And then, of course, we progressed through the year and had a little bit more time where we had more kids together. So we have that. We had band camp, but in a modified way. Football game performances, even though we only had a few of them, we still were able to do those. And I thought offering that to the kids that, have come through the program, that know what that feeling is like, that excitement of being, part of the football crowd, however small they were this year. I thought it was important for them to have that opportunity. And so we had that, the minimal number of performances. We also had a family and friends night where we engaged the entire community to come out for free, to come into the stadium to see the kids perform. And we continue on with our regular in-house clinics and masterclass series and symphonic camp with guest clinicians and conductors. So while we may not necessarily be able to leave our space, we're still having that engagement with people outside of our program, and that will continue to help us grow and push us from a performance perspective. We still engage in virtual performances as well. In fact, I'm in a tuxedo right now because I just left the stage, having given our concert bands pre-assessment concert. And we engaged our families and friends and community via Facebook Live. And with that being open out there, the middle school kids are able to see that and see that we're still moving forward. Our Wind Symphony will do the same thing Thursday night. And we're also going to record for the Music for All Southeastern Regional Festival and perform in that on the 23rd. And our Winter Guard is still fully engaged in WGI and our local circuit activity. And so, again, we're giving the kids as much as possible that what we're used to doing without over rehearsing them. I think it's also critical that we remind the kids and the parents why we do what we do. With us not being able to compete, it's critical that they understand that we're going there for the feedback and for the camaraderie, and that's still happening for us. So we're there for the joy of performance and growth, for the camaraderie. I also talk a good amount about legacy, though. And I think it's important for us to honor those past members that have opened this path for us. So we continue working, continue, the trajectory forward for the program, because those people have been here before us. And we continue to pave a way for those future students that are going to come through the program after us. I think we all know, or at least really deeply hope, that this current circumstance is not permanent. So we're doing our best to, I call it, kind of keeping the engine warm and keeping the vehicle moving forward, even if it's a little bit slower than what we're used to.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see that. I mean, even, registration just ended for the fall for Music for All. And it seems just like the numbers are just pretty much where they were pre-pandemic. And that's exciting in many ways, that even if people feel like they have to stay a little more regionally based, but that I think that we're all starting to learn what the parameters are of this whole thing. At first, everybody was just scared about anything, right? Because the we don't know, and the steps that the winter guard circuits are taking, and the fall. I think that I feel like that things are going to start moving that way, and even if it's having to clear out stadiums and things like that for people just to perform for their own parents or things virtually, I think it's starting to move that way. Does anybody else want to kind of speak to that, to what you think, Bo?
I mean, I'll talk a little bit about how, in terms of retention of kids, kind of backtrack to what you said. And I think for me, part of it is I want every kid back in the Pope band. The highly dedicated musician, the kid that's there for the social aspect of band, we need them all. And I find sometimes that if they're not enjoying that experience, I call it the shiny penny syndrome. If that shiny penny is culinary arts, they're going to go to it if they're not fully enjoying and invested in their current situation. So what we tried to just do, and we're just finishing up, but it's been really impactful, is having, I felt like since we didn't get to necessarily have a marching band season this year, our kids didn't necessarily know the incoming freshmen in concert band to win symphony. So we did a giant band project where I paired a student with another student in an opposite band of them. And it was a tutoring session. It was a mental health check-in. It was a hello, how we doing? And just to kind of start putting olive branches across the bands to create a community, since we weren't not necessarily able to do that and create the same rapport as we typically do in the fall. And so the kids are kind of walking away from that they loved it. The parents have been in love with that project for them. And my goal is that helps us in terms of our retention with the high school students, because as that freshman that maybe didn't get those experiences, you just worked for 6 to 8 weeks with this maybe senior all-state kiddo who inspired you to continue working at your craft. And so I hope that continues for our program.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's so difficult with seniors. Sometimes people quit band sophomores or juniors because the person who made it fun for them isn't there anymore, because they don't realize it's now their time to make it fun, to create the atmosphere for the other ones. And I think in an experience like that, they can probably see it tangibly, that they can have an effect on somebody else, and that being a leader has nothing to do with the title. It's being a good role model for each one of those. We have a question here just about what accommodations are you planning for economic hardships? We've not been able to do the fundraising and things moving forward, and support systems for next year. How do you feel like this is going to affect your recruiting and retention? And what kind of accommodations have you made for that? Does anybody want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think I can. We tried to make the fall. I kind of need to encapsulate what we did as well. So we have been virtual and in person, but it's about every 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time each. It's never exactly the same. And so when we tried to work toward having a fall season, we had already, our kids had already we had released the music for the show for the next year, just for them to check out. They really wanted to do that show, even if it was a modified show. So we still did that. We scaled back production, and then we just took down the cost as much as possible. We said, how can we do this in a reasonable amount so that you're getting an experience, and you're also still getting what you want out of the fall and or the year. And then on top of that, we have worked really hard to always have room in our budget every year, so that we never turn a kid away. So if a kid says, I can't afford it, they're going to be in the band. That never happens. So, and people sometimes are really skittish about it, but we, even what they take as charity, but we really emphasize the fact that that's what we're here for. We're here to help everybody, and we establish these funds. And that's part of what we're doing with this alumni project I mentioned. We're trying to raise those funds to work toward that. And on the senior subject, I did want to mention that, or like keeping those kids and working with those kids that we have that are, I keep thinking about these seniors. I have to say, the kids that I've had the hardest time with, or I feel like I have to work the hardest for, is our senior class. They are the ones that are the most disenfranchised. And I keep thinking about this. I don't know, there's this horrible thing in my mind where I keep thinking this is their last experience possibly with concert band or marching band or anything before they go off. And that's why we did the alumni project. We want them to look back, but then we wanted them to have fun while we were doing things this year. So in the fall, we did a drive-through safari for our middle school where we actually had the kids all set up all over campus, and they got into costumes, and the parents went all out and got like blow up monkeys and things. And little fifth graders drove around thinking about what instrument they wanted to play, and they could preview them. And then we did it again on Halloween, or 2 days before. The kids were in costumes and they played, and it was every elementary schooler. So we just invited every elementary. That was a huge mistake. It was great, but we actually blocked traffic 2 miles in each direction on our high school, and the police showed up. And we were like, we didn't know it was going to have this great turnout. And the kids had a blast, and all these kids were in these cars lit up in costumes, and we handed out candy, really safely, of course. But that event, our kids are begging us to keep this Halloween event. Every year, can we please have a night where we invite kids to drive through and have us play? And what I like about that event that's different is that's a long game recruitment thing. Now we're having parents and kids in kindergarten and first grade and second grade see our program that live in the community and think, I can't wait till my kid can be the kid that's playing for these kids one day. And that's what we're trying to do. So that event made us start thinking about everything we could do that was a long game plan, because the short term ones, they're exhausting. But then the things that feel good, I feel like, are the quadrant 2 planning things that feel really like they're long term. And so that's kind of the stuff that we've been doing too. But the money side, we really just have tried to set aside funds and cut as many costs. It really made us reevaluate what was really important to us.
Awesome. Fantastic. Anybody else on the financial side before we jump into a couple other questions?
Well, I will say that, I think one of the things that we do as band directors really well is generally we're pretty good stewards of the money. We do the best we can. I mean, we stretch that penny as far as it will possibly go before we start, talking about more. This past year, and it was painful to do, but it was necessary. We cut the Blythewood budget by more than a third. It took some serious scaling back, recognizing that, number one, we're not doing all the same things we typically would do, but also that there are some hardships that some families are going to be experiencing. And so, thinking forward, we were definitely going to be looking at those line items and reevaluating exactly how far we need to go with those things, and recognizing also that really, and I talked to our district folks about this as well, that right now what we're looking at is at least a 5-year recovery period. So we need to think about that in terms of a numbers game with the students and participation, but also from a financial perspective. I don't think there's going to be anybody that's going to be able to come back at the beginning of next year and say, hey, boom, we're back at this budget that we usually have. It's not going to work that way. So we have to work our way back up to that. And like Jacob, we set aside funds to kind of take care of those students that may not necessarily have, that may be in a hardship or may not necessarily be able to afford it. We never turn those students away. We're fortunate to have we're able to seek out help in the front office when necessary to kind of take care of students and their needs and participation as well. We also tend to kind of reserve the sponsorship letterhead for those students that need to be able, that just aren't able to do anything financially. And so we would give them letterhead and say, okay, you can take this and you can go out into the community and seek out those sponsorships to take care of your band needs for the year.
I'm sure my students get tired of hearing about it, but I'm hearing all of you talk about your philosophy. You know, in college we have to have them write their philosophies, and they don't like to do that. But really, it's guided every decision that you've made, and who you want to be, or who you want your program to be, and how it deals with in your community. So should we be reevaluating what we do and how we do it in our band programs, and should we moving forward have more points of entry, or should our programs look like something different than what it always has? That's been, again, one of the good things about the pandemic. In some ways, it's made institutions really kind of reevaluate what it is we do and why we do things. Have we always done it? Do we do it because we've always done it this way, or is it the best way to do it? So moving forward, what do you think some things will change in terms of points of entry with music programs, or what they look like, or how we have the makeup of our programs look different, from what music we play to what instruments we select? Does anybody want to jump in on that one?
That's a tough one. I'll be honest with you. That is a tough one, because I mean, we are all trained with very specific skill sets. And so if we're talking about, additional points of entry, I think we need to take a look at, and be honest with ourselves about what we are comfortable doing and teaching well. So the students are not receiving kind of a half-baked education in whatever new point of entry that we're talking about, but also kind of taking a look at what our setup is. We don't want to compromise, what was working well also. So I think it's going to take a little bit of teamwork with our guidance departments to figure out, what's going to work well in terms of scheduling. Because I think we all are kind of, right now, AP classes and arts classes are constantly competing for the same kids. So you got to be a little bit careful about that. So it's going to take some teamwork with that guidance department to figure out what's going to work well. And then be honest with yourself as well about what skill sets you have that work well for you. We have been talking at Blythewood a little bit about opening up another band class that is, geared towards taking care of those students that are just and we have that wide spectrum of ability levels. And so making sure that we have that class set aside for those kids that need that. And maybe that's a way in for those students that maybe have, if this fits into your philosophy, if they're, allowing some kids that maybe didn't finish middle school band to jump in and start kind of jumpstart again and get going. But I will say that in Richland too, in general, early on, we adopted the open arms, philosophy for those students that maybe have dropped off and I haven't been participating as much as they could. When we go into that next year, understanding that, there's been a ton of hardships, mentally as well as financially, that, we'd accept those students back.
Yeah, for me, the early in my career, it was like out of the band room, out of the program. But then I realized that everybody makes mistakes, and that the door maybe should be a little more open. Where my daughter is, she was at a middle school, and she started beginning of the year, and there were not many sixth graders, and so she started a second beginning band at the middle of the year, or she did an experience where they did a music appreciation and got all of them together, and the choir, orchestra, and band teacher taught them to try to get sixth graders to pick back up. And I think that if we're going to recover from this in terms of numbers, we're just going to have to be as flexible as possible and try and find ways for more people to be involved in our programs. And that might be different ensembles. That might be beginning band in high school, or finding ways so that we're as inclusive as we want to be. We say we are, but I don't know that we always are. We'll go Jacob and then Kevin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're doing that. We're going to try to start a beginning band at the high school. We've been working with our counselors, and starting a secondary beginning band in 7th and 8th grade at the middle school. And, that begs the question, what will those kids be like in the future if they've only had 1 year? But to us, it really did make us look at it and say, okay, here are our goals, but aren't our goal, what was our real goal? Competitive goals are one thing, but are we really going for this, or are we going for having everybody here to be a part of this experience? And that's something I really loved about what Kevin was saying earlier when he was talking about what the Hamilton Project was. Is it made me even think about it right now. So I kind of got inspired thinking about that whole the experience of the students in something that wasn't a competitive show. When he was describing, I thought, wow, what a great opportunity for performance sake, which our theater friends do all the time. There's not always theater. I love that about them. I get caught up in the competitive stuff. There was a period of this year where I was just drilling fundamentals into the kids like crazy because I was so nervous about how they would play next year. And then I had to stop myself, and not that fundamentals are bad, obviously, but our kids want to play music. They want to, I almost let myself get out of the moment of, oh, let's listen to this great concert band. Oh, what do you think about this work? And just getting them into the music world and talking about what was on the Grammys. I do that even on years that are not COVID. I get my nose so stuck in the score and the book, which is a great thing, but also bad because sometimes we're not relating to our kids where they're at right now. And so that is what has made me think about our kids' experience going into next year and the years after, when we maybe aren't going to big competitions or something. We don't always have to. Maybe there's other big experiences that can be a part that are just wholesome because they are musical, and that should be a thing. And I think even CPA and our concert assessments can get caught up in that as well.
Yeah, so Kevin, you've kind of seen all aspects of things kind of pivot, and you've been on the forefront of that. Do you have any thoughts on where this is going to all head?
Well, I don't know where it's going to head in terms of how maybe the curriculum offerings will be different, but I do think that, I don't know if everybody here feels the same way I did, but just the first day we were able to come back together and just play the first note together as a group, how much I cherished that moment with them. And then I think one of the things that happens, at least to me, I know, is we sometimes have so many programs that we're doing, one event after the next event after the next event. And many of them for us are not competitions. Actually, there's just, we have just a busy performance schedule for all the ensembles. And so we're learning a lot of rep, we're doing a lot of things. And I think with this particular situation we're in now, we don't have quite as many of those. And I found myself just the other day, we were playing something and the kids were really doing a great job. And I just stopped and I said, guys, this is what it's about. When we were quarantined, about a month into it, this is what I dreamt about. This is what I wanted, to come together with you and make beautiful music with people for all the right reasons. And what an incredible thing that you're able to do right now. And what a privilege it is, because we do know that there are some of our friends and colleagues around the country who still aren't able to be together. And I talk to several people like weekly that still have not seen their students since March. So I know for us, and I talk to about our students all the time, how blessed we are to be able to have fellowship and to come together, even if it's only 2 days a week where we have everybody together, in the same space. But I know I've really tried to focus more on what a privilege it is, that just being performers in the performing arts and the opportunities that we have together, and less about maybe an event or playing for people, but really doing it for each other and being there for one another. And I think that at least in the short term, when we're coming through this, I think most of us will cherish this opportunity maybe more than we did before. Not that we took it for granted, but we were always constantly looking forward to the next thing. And I know for me, it's always, that next where I found myself in this situation where I just pause and really try to discuss and cherish the moment and really try to point out to them how wonderful they are.
Fantastic. Oh, we have one question let's get to real quickly before we finish up. Justin Scott asks, are any of your programs allowed to have any type of indoor music performances this semester? For example, a chamber music recital in the gym or auditorium with reduced audience? If not, what are you doing to replace those live performances rather than just streaming for parents? Has anybody had the opportunity to do those?
In Blythewood, we were supposed to have a winter concert, and we had gone through the process of devising, the seating plan, and we ticketed it, and when we gave it, we said, all right, two guests per student, to kind of make it equitable, so everybody, has somebody there to support them and folks can see them. And then right before we were supposed to have the concert, the district said no more after school activities, and so we lost that opportunity. That was kind of a bummer. But just tonight, we kind of went in a modified simplified way for the concert band, our youngest ensemble. We did stream our pre-CPA performance, and we're going to do the same thing again for Wind Symphony on Thursday night. And we were able to have a guest clinician at least come in and work with the kids and kind of clinic them that way. So we're not necessarily cut off from doing performances. We can do them. We just need the timing to be right. We kind of had an uptick in the winter right before we were supposed to do our concerts. So that kind of cut us on that one. But we are able to at least do it in Richland too.
Excellent. Anybody else had some experiences with that? Oh, you guys are still hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are planning a big outdoor spring concert right now to kind of be able to do that outside and at least give our seniors that last hurrah. So.
Yeah, fantastic.
One thing I did want to share really quickly here, our associate director of bands, John Burbank, who is a mastermind, is also director of percussion, and they have a big the big to do is their press play concert, which is everything percussion. It's a huge production. They kind of scaled back this year, but they were going to offer 2 performances of that, and so that'll allow for more folks to have the opportunity to see it. And it takes the crowds down, gives us a little bit of more social distancing ability in that auditorium, and so that's one way to kind of work around this. And it takes a little bit more time, but I think it's worth it for the students and their parents to have the opportunity to experience performances.
Fantastic. One more quick. Oh, I'm sorry, Jacob. Go ahead, and then we'll get a couple of these questions.
I was just saying we're going to do a Pops concert. We're doing 2 concerts outdoors, and one is a Pops concert, which we're going to try to get a big blow-up movie screen and have a projection like scenes from different things our kids in the CTE department can put together and play along with that under the lights.
Awesome. We have some questions. Nathan wants to know, Quintus, how you're planning to communicate that open door policy to students who've left band. And for everybody, James Dykes from Florida wants to know, what are some of the most meaningful moments your students have experienced this year? Quintus, you want to talk about the open door policy?
Yeah. So we use the Charms program. And so all that contact information is still there. And we'll be, as we go into that process of handing out the intent forms and all that good stuff, there are going to be email blasts and phone calls going out to those folks, letting them know that, hey, this is still available to you. We recognize that folks have experienced challenges. We're not going to ask questions. Get your horn, start playing, come back home.
Yeah, awesome. And then meaningful moments as we kind of wrap things up.
I think tonight was one of the biggest ones. It was wonderful. We had our guest clinician come up and work with the kids for an hour after they gave their run through of their pre-CPA material, and he hit the nail on the head. I didn't have to say a word. He talked about how this is just, there aren't very many programs that have an opportunity to get together and to play. And so they should cherish it. And it's our youngest group, and so it's kind of hard for them to see that and understand that, the youngest kids. But that was meaningful. And then I had the opportunity to talk to the kids and let them know that, look, we value what you're doing and the time you're putting in, the hard work you're putting in this really strange and crazy setting. And let them know, of course, that was the best we heard them play as a full group. And you can see some sit up a little bit taller, and there's a little bit more twinkle in the eye. And that was really cool to see. And that just happened a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Awesome. That's what sustains us. Who else?
Yeah, we actually, it's a result of something we did a year ago. We started these marchathons where we play in neighborhoods. I actually got the idea from Justin Scott, if that's the one from Tennessee, and the group. And we've been going into neighborhoods and playing for different community, they have their own private parade. And one of the things we did was we started asking all the neighborhoods to pick 3 of their veterans that we could honor. And so we would play their military tune on their lawn. So the whole band comes off the buses and lines up on their front doorstep. And a man named Cliff Steffi was 95. He was in World War II. We started playing and he didn't realize we were there, and then he stood up and saluted, and the whole band met him. And It was a really emotional experience in 2019. Well, this year our town really still wanted to honor our veterans, and they put on the Veterans Day Parade. It was just modified a whole bunch where there was less bands and they were really spaced out. And then our kids happened to turn the corner, and he happened to be in the perfect spot on the corner as the kids, and they could all see him. He stood up and it was when we got there, and he was pointing at all the children, with his little old shaky hand pointing at all the children. All the kids were like, "That was Mr. Steppy. That was Mr. Steppy." And that was so meaningful to me because they remembered that. They remembered, and they're still making someone's day so much better through music in that moment.
Fantastic. Anything else as we close up, gentlemen? Well, you have certainly heard so many different ideas tonight, just kind of rolling off the tongues of everybody. And I know that everyone would be willing to give more information. If you didn't hear an answer to something, please feel free to reach out to me or someone else on social media. But we've been so glad that you've been here with us tonight. Music for All's mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. Our vision is to be a catalyst to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in active music making in his or her scholastic environment. I want to thank Jacob Campos, Kevin Ford, Bo Sodders, and Quintus Witten, and I'd like to thank our national presenting sponsor, the Yamaha Corporation of America. Be sure to check out the Yamaha Educator Suite at yamahaeducatorsuite.com. Before we say goodnight, it's more important that you understand more than ever, these uncertain times continue to impact Music for All, and we're extremely grateful for any donations gifted to our nonprofit organization. If you've enjoyed tonight's program, and in order for us to continue to provide our free educational resources and advocacy materials, please consider gifting Music for All in any amount. Your gift allows us to serve our mission with future educational programming such as this webinar. Please visit musicforall.org/give. And finally, please join us for our next episode of Mind the Gap in 2 weeks, Tuesday, March 16th at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central Time for the second part of Recruitment and Retention with Scott Casagrande and Candy Horton, also moderated in this time by David Starnes. Until then, for Music for All, I'm Susan Smith. Thank you all and good night.